episode of the Australian Small Business Show. Matt, how are you?
Great, Christy Lee. How are you today?
I'm really well, and we are very excited to be welcoming to the show today Prue Saxby from the Grant Writing Academy. Prue, welcome.
Welcome and thank you, Matt and Christy Lee. Lovely to be here and part of the show.
We are so
Welcome.
excited. You've been on my hit list of people to have on the podcast for a while now because you are the grant master, and I'll get you to tell everyone what that means in a moment. But it's such a really interesting topic for small businesses. But before we get into talking about grants, why don't you tell everyone about your business, Indigo Gold, and the Grant Writing Academy and what you do?
Sure. I've had Indigo Gold. I started the company about 12 years ago now, and gee, time goes fast. And I started the Grant Writing Academy when I started niching into grants because I was helping businesses with a whole raft of things,
Yep.
but people just kept coming back to grants. So obviously it was a bit of a sign. So I started the Grant Writing Academy and offering, memberships and all sorts of services, and then have really, it's really been quite a dedicated time to trying to make grants slowly. Like, I learn all the time. I never stop learning how to make them easier and more efficient and less stressful is the main thing, because people do get in a bit of a rut with grants. They put them into too hard basket and either don't even deal with them or just want to do something with them when they see an option. So the whole idea along the journey for me has been trying to help my community and all the people, anyone to do with grants, on both sides, whether it's the funders
Yep.
or the grant writers, to just help to make things better.
Yeah, I love that. And I think if we just start with, the concept of grants, because I think a lot of small business owners kind of think that it's something that doesn't apply to them or don't know a lot about the world of grants if they've never applied for a grant or hadn't even known it was an option for them. So a grant is effectively, and correct me if this is incorrect, where a government department or some funder, as you said, offers a grant based on a certain set of criteria that a business can apply for to usually fulfill a specific sort of project or task in their business. Is that kind of the gist of how you describe a grant generally?
Yes, they're quite targeted in a way. So the key thing, if I was giving a tip in another time, I'd be saying make sure you align. But yes, they're also usually for business, it is, state or federal governments, no matter where they are. But sometimes there's some corporate things you could be eligible for. So there's some corporate space, sometimes councils, if you're in a bigger city, they can be offering grants for businesses as well. So it's not always just state government. And we'll probably get into it a bit later, but if not, I'll remember to just explain something else. But they're really there. There can be rebates and there can be all sorts of things as well. But a true grant is a great process. Having said that, sometimes some tenders are really grants and some grants are tenders. So it can get a little bit blurry, but we'll try and stick to just the grant
So
concept.
I think that's important because I'm confused already, right? So I think that a lot of small business owners would be. So, when you type in grants into the Google search engine, I imagine it's difficult to kind of work out where to start.
Yes, well, apart from getting grant, then you come up straight away all the time. Yeah, it is, it's pretty confusing, I think, for people that aren't in the space.
Yep.
So, grant opportunities, probably a great, way to type in, and we could talk for, half a day on the best way to find grants. But yeah, true grant is money put aside for a particular opportunity by a range of funders. So yeah, let's stick with that.
I like that. Yeah, that's pretty clear, I think. Absolutely. And I think, I know about grants in the world of like non-for-profits or government areas, and in their areas I don't work in at all. But there are grants that might be available to a small business or any size business to fulfill a certain project. I had a client reach out. They were Queensland based. It may have been a Queensland state government grant some years ago, and they were going for a grant to fix the HR in their business, and the grant was available for a number of different businesses areas, but it had to be a particular price point and obviously scope and all of these kinds of things. And that was the first time I went, oh, I kind of realized that this grant space was open for businesses as well. Do you think that's a bit of a misconception that lots of people might have?
Well, I think most businesses know well, I thought they did know there's grants out there because I do have a lot of people ring me up. I call them, the tire kickers,
Yep.
to find out if there's a grant before they start a business, basically thinking that the government's just going to hand
Going
them
to fund them.
money
Yeah.
to help them start off. And I have to be very polite, but you've got to start your business. You've got to show that you're successful first,
Yep.
except for sometimes the commercialization ones, entrepreneurship type things when you're getting into maybe an industry or an invention, that
Something
sort of
new.
thing
Yep.
can be a little bit different, but generally you have been going for a little bit of time. You've shown that you're successful and you've got what it takes. But there is quite a broad range of opportunities. And there's always ways to think differently about how you could be involved with grants.
Okay. And so if we've got business owners listening that are thinking, where do I even go, to find out what grants are out there in the world? Is there a place that that they can go to? Is it the government websites themselves? Is that where they'd find the information?
There are lots of places, but a lot of people find the government databases quite difficult.
Yeah.
So one of the things I offer, it's a free grant list when they first sign up for my tips. So they get whatever month it is, they get the grants list with the tips. And then that's the only time they get the massive list. It's about 80 pages long. So it's
Yep.
Wow.
full of opportunities. So it's a good way to just explore whether it's, you get it in the last week of the month and, some of them might be closed, but some grants will go for a year or more. Other
Yep.
grants might be only open for 2 or 4 or 6 weeks. It just depends. Matt, you're going to ask a question then.
No, I was going to say that's probably important for small business owners to understand is that grants for the most part are quite dynamic, aren't they? So they're not, there might be some grants that exist all the time, but for most grants, they kind of have a closing date and they're only open for a period of time.
So that's called the grant window. So it might open, say, on the 1st of March and closes 6 weeks later. Some of them only are open 2 weeks. Some of the state grants that come out for business, whichever state you're in, it might have an open time, or they might actually let you know that it's going to open for 2 weeks. Then they technically open it. So that's when you can put in your application. And then it might only be open for a short time. So they're trying to give you time to get ready. So every fund is different the way they do it. And this is what gets confusing for people because there is no continuity about it.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I'd love to change. But getting back to where you can look, there are lots of, people on there, different grant writers or people that provide grant information, whether they're a sporting related group, they'll have grants. Regional Development Australia put out a grant list for the area they're within because there's 40 something of those around Australia. Councils sometimes share opportunity for the region to actually find grants on a database that they have paid for through a third party. And then, there's places like me who have memberships where you are paying for the service to get notified of grants and chat about them. So there's a whole heap of things. And again, it gets very confusing for people.
And the whole process of applying for a grant, as someone who went through this process last year themselves, it's not always simple. Like some of the grant application processes and the information that the funder is looking for, it's not something you're doing in 5 minutes, right? These are quite meaty documents that you're putting together.
Yes, generally, the more you're applying for, the more work you've got to do in a way.
Sure. Yeah.
So, say, for example, a state government is giving out grants for some sort of small business. Usually, not every state, but some of them do it. Like I'm from Queensland, so I know the Queensland government do those usually once a year. And they might change them. So one time it might be about marketing type elements that you can put in for to maybe scale, put a payment section in your website to revamp your website, to do some planning, where the last round they did was more for continuity. So you could put in for UPS systems to help you continue and not lose all your data when you suddenly lose power. So they had lots of different things. So they may change the reason over time. So what I say to do, and this is one thing, if there's one thing that people listening to this could get out of it, is have a little grant want list, even if you're writing it on a piece of paper and then putting it as part of your strategic planning in the future, and just have an idea of what you could apply for and be on the radar to look at how much it would cost to run those programs. Start to think about, well, I need to probably get some decent quotes to think, is that something I really need to do? Because what happens when a grant comes out is that's when people get on this treadmill of not knowing what to do first, because they're really not ready. And so they're putting in for a grant they're not ready for, and that's nearly a recipe for disaster.
But going back to what you said at the start, it could be just a case of, I'd like to get some money to help me run my business, so they don't have a clear plan on what they're after. So that probably makes them confused at the same time.
And usually that's what the fund is looking for, no matter whether it's, really government or whoever it is. So, if I'm the assessor, I'm looking for that they align with the grant purpose. And really, if they're doing this sort of scattergun approach and not putting in a good story about, we've had this in our strategic plan for the last, 2 years. This has now come up as a great opportunity. We've had all the, we've been getting all the information, and you can really show the difference it will make for the business. That's what they're looking for, especially with business. They're wanting to see the difference it'll make. And then some people make the mistake of thinking, it'll say in the guidelines this is all about employment, getting more people employed, right? So then they think that maybe a $5,000 grant to do something to their website, and then they'll ask them how many people this is going to help employ. And they might say something ridiculous like 3 or 4. Now, there's no way in the world a $5,000 investment, I don't believe, like there could be some strange thing, could turn into 3 or
4 jobs.
People. Like it just doesn't work like that. So some of the questions can be a bit misleading, because then the people start to put the ridiculous answers and they don't realize. So it really it is confusing for people.
Yeah. Are there any situations where it would be a bad move for a business to be seeking a grant? Like, I can't see any downside in if there's a relevant grant going for it. Is there anything that I'm missing there in terms of, is there a downside?
People will often read into things that they are eligible and they're not. People do not read guidelines very well. So sometimes someone will start an application and then they'll ring me to get some help, because I do one-on-one services sometimes. And then the first thing I check is, are you eligible? No, we're eligible.
No.
And I will make sure, I'll say, no, I'm really sorry. I'm going to go through the criteria, ask you some questions, and maybe 2 out of 10, they're actually not eligible at all, or they're thinking they are, they're thinking their project matches. They haven't read the things that mean that the project items aren't eligible. So they think they're eligible, but then when you read the nitty-gritty about what you can't apply for, they were going to do that, which would mean they'd put all the work in and their application was never eligible to start with. So they would have wasted hours and hours of time. So there is times when it's not a good fit. It's because usually it's alignment. Or they're just dreaming more into it than there is. And
or more than likely someone at a barbecue's told them they can do it.
Yes, probably. And look, somebody, people do get a little jealous of others. They hear, people ring me up and they'll say, oh, my mate said that there's this grant out. And I'll say, well, it doesn't mean that you're eligible. Or, oh, they've got heaps of grants. And, trying to get the information is, five levels down, 5 changes of information. And I always deal with the facts. So,
I imagine too that there's a lot of small business owners that purely focus on themselves when it comes to grant applications, and not considering, because my understanding is that the grants are provided, but there's always something that needs to provide opportunities or help a local government or state government achieve their outcomes as well. So I imagine a lot of small business, when they go through this process, they're probably not considering those as much as they are considering, well, it's going to improve my website, it's going to improve my business as well.
Yeah, so you need to think of the flow-on effect of
Yep.
what you're putting in for. And look, if it's only a five or $10,000 grant, these small business ones, obviously the flow-on effect is much less, but I always make sure my clients always include some sort of
Yep.
flow-on effect, even for small grants. But then the bigger you go, like I do grants that are 10, $12 million
Yep.
applications. So you're thinking about the change to the supply chain, the change to
Yep.
industry, the
Technology, something like
change
that.
to the freight companies,
Yep.
people they get maintenance. It's massive. And even for social enterprise grants, because there's businesses who are working in the social enterprise space, they're still a business. They still have an ABN. So I
Yeah.
class them as businesses. And the flow on effect for that is, if they're helping people, say they haven't got jobs or whatever, and then once those people go off unemployment and all the benefits and then not as sick anymore, all those things multiply, then there's actually an impact on the government spend because that person now
Yep.
is no longer taking as much from the government. So, there's so many sort of benefits that people need to get the data about. So it's quite a lot of data that you have to
Yep.
give in a way. It's probably more data than people realize. Getting the proof's important. Proof in the
Yeah.
pudding.
Yep.
Absolutely. And we're going to get Prue back in a further episode to really talk about how you can improve your chances of securing a grant or getting grant success. So we're going to get into those tips in a bit more detail in that episode. And I think what we've sort of unpacked so far today is grants are a bit complicated. Like there's a lot to them. It's not a simple process. And I think that's why I want to recommend to everyone that you go and check out Prue's work, sign up to her newsletter, and just follow what she's doing, because if grants are relevant to your business, if you're identifying that this is an option for you and you want to explore this, getting some expertise around you, I think, is certainly one of the shortcuts to making sure your grant is successful. And Prue's got lots of amazing free resources as well as her membership and her services. So if people want to connect with you, if they want to get on that newsletter list, Prue, or join your, any of your work, where do they find you? Where should we be sending people?
A couple of spots. So Indigo Gold is the company, and that's where the free grant list and you can get the weekly tips. So just go to Indigo Gold. There's no other business called that, and you'll see the little sign up. They can also, if they'd rather just do something else, my Grant Writing Academy Facebook community. So you have to request to join. It's mainly to keep spammers out. Just beware, I've also got a paid membership one. So when you're looking, just make sure you go to the Grant Writing Academy one just on its own without the membership in there. And that way they can request to join and they can ask questions anytime of me. People don't, but I check every day. I check twice a day. And, people are welcome to ask questions and get some direction because grants aren't for everyone. It might be a good way to find out whether they're the right fit, or I'll always give them a little bit of homework to do and get them on a path and get a bit of momentum going, because that's important with grants, momentum.
Fantastic. That's so generous.
Yep.
We will put those links in the show notes, so go and check those out.
Yep. I'm just saying it's a very simple process. As we've been chatting, I've just subscribed.
Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
there you go.
Tick.
Thank you, Matt.
Matt's now on the email list and he's going to go through that grant list. I can guarantee it. And he'll be knocking on my office door with some questions.
I'm an accountant. Of course I'm going to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you didn't tell me that.
Amazing. Prue, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise. We can't wait to have you back again. So we appreciate you so much.
You're very welcome.
Awesome.
It's nice to be here and helping people.
Thanks, Prue.